Our discussion about demand and supply will begin by looking at first what we call the market. What is a market? Well, we say market is an institution which allows the interaction between buyers and seller. And we think that market allocates for us the resources by looking at consumers' need. So this interaction of consumers and producers will determine for us what we call the market price, and also the equilibrium or market quantity to be produced. And any changes in demand or supply we will see will result in changes in this equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So to analyze how the market functions, we need to examine the behavior of both consumers and producers. We begin our discussion by looking at what we call the theory of demand. What is demand? We say demand is simply a relationship between various possible prices and the corresponding quantities that consumers are willing and able to purchase per time period, ceteris paribus. Now, there are a lot of terms that are in this little statement, and I want to sort of break it down. First thing first is that what we look at is this, that the demand is a relationship between price and quantity. So that's one thing. So when I look at the two variables, we're looking at price and quantity. So how the different price level can result in different quantity to be demanded by a consumer. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this, that we said consumers are willing and able to purchase per period of time. So what is willingness and ability? Now we need to understand this, that in economics, your willingness is not the only thing required for you to buy the good. In order for you to buy the good, you need to also have what we call your ability or the money. If I have the willingness to buy, let's say, a very expensive car, but I don't have the ability, then my demand will not be what we call effective demand. If you want the demand to be effective, you need to have both the willingness and ability in order for you to be able to buy the good. Now that brings us to another point, which is time period. Now, whenever we're looking at demand for any good, let's say cars or let's say pizza or whatever, we consider it within a time period. Like for example, we can say demand for cars in a year, or for example, demand for pizzas in a week, and so on and so forth. So time period tells us the duration that we are considering for the demand. We can't have like a unlimited time period of consideration, because that could change a lot of variables, a lot of things, and demand may not be the same, or the relationship between price and quantity may not be the same. Lastly, there is a term that we use here called ceteris paribus. What does ceteris paribus mean? Ceteris paribus simply means everything else constant. So what does everything else constant mean? In the context of demand and supply, or in the context of demand right now, everything else constant means that all other variables which can affect demand, like for example taste of a consumer, like for example weather, for example, like in winters people tend to wear sweaters because it's cold weather, or any other variable other than the price and quantity. That's the two variables we are not keeping what we call constant, but all other variables we want to keep constant, and we want to keep them constant because they can affect our demand or decisions. For example, suddenly there is a taste for skinny jeans, then that would mean irrespective of whatever the price and quantity, people might still prefer to buy skinny jeans. So the idea goes this, that by keeping price and quantity constant, we are trying to make sure that we just look at the relationship of price and quantity and isolate everything else. The relationship between price per unit of a good and the quantity demanded in any period of time is actually inverse, and we can show this through what we call our demand curve. Our demand curve shows us a relationship between price and quantity demanded, and when we draw our demand curve, on my y-axis I'm going to put price per unit, and on my x-axis I'm going to put quantity. So let's assume this is demand for, let's say, cars. If the demand for cars is to be seen in any period, let's say in a month, we will see that our demand curve is actually going to be downward sloping. Downward sloping means that price goes down, you will see that the quantity that is bought or quantity that is demanded will be going up. And the reason why that happens is something which we will talk about in a little while. But basically, if the price goes down from P naught to, for example, P1, okay, this is by the way price per unit, then the quantity that is being bought will go up from Q0 to Q1. And this is called what we sometimes say in economics the law of demand. This is called a law of demand primarily because typically a lot of goods will depict this kind of a behavior, that when their price goes down, keeping everything else constant like quality and taste and all that, we will see the quantity demanded to go up, and that basically makes our demand curve downward downward sloping. So let's discuss now, why is our demand curve downward sloping? The reason why our demand curve is downward sloping, let me write this. Why is demand curve downward sloping? Well, we identified three reasons why demand curve is downward sloping. One is what we call the income effect. The second one is what we call substitution effect. And lastly is something what we call utility effect. The income effect of a price change is something that has to do with how our prices or how prices of goods affect our income. When the price of a good goes down, we say that while your income may not change, the money income that do not change, that the income that you earn, for example, let's say if I earn $100, let's say this is my wage, that will not change when my price goes down. But if, for example, I tell you I'm just spending this $100 on a good where the price of that good was, for example, $1, and now it goes to, for example, $50, then suddenly you will realize this, that your purchasing power or your real income, as we call it, your real income will go up. Why is that so? Because let's say if you were spending $100, and that's, let's say this is your income, you were spending this $100 on a good which was for $1, your quantity will be, for example, 100 units. But what if I tell you that the price goes down to 0.5? Now your same income of $100 will make you buy, or you will be able to buy basically 200 units of the good. So what we see is this, that when the price of a good goes down, suddenly your purchasing power of the money that you earn, or your real income basically means income that takes into account uh, uh, prices of a good. So your real income or purchasing power will go up, and this ability of buying more will make you buy more of a good, and that basically means your quantity of a good that is demanded will go up, because when the price goes down, your same income, same money income, as we call it, money income is one that does not take into account prices, so same money income can buy you much more, and this rise in purchasing power will make your quantity demanded to go up. So one reason why the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up, is because your real income or purchasing power is going up. The second reason that we point out why your demand curve is downward sloping is basically what we call substitution effect. Substitution effect now looks at the price of a good as compared to the competitors or substitutes that are available. We know this, when the price of a good goes down, it can become relatively cheaper than its substitutes, and the fact that it becomes relatively cheaper would mean that you will probably going to buy more of that good and less of another. So for example, if price of coke goes down, it can become relatively cheaper than the competitor, which is Pepsi, becomes, and that can make us buy more of that good. So when the price goes down, it becomes relatively cheaper than substitutes, and that results in us to buy more of this good and less of the substitute. So the second reason why our demand curve is downward sloping, or why consumers buy more of a good when the price goes down, is because of the substitution effect. The third reason why demand curve is downward sloping is because of utility effect. Now, utility means satisfaction. So the utility effect says this, that whenever we are buying more of a good, let's say I consume the first slice of pizza, then second slice of pizza, and then third slice of pizza, every single subsequent price of pizza that I consume, the satisfaction that I get will go down because I am consuming more and more of that good. So if you're really hungry, the first pizza that you eat, or the first slice of pizza that you eat, will give you the most satisfaction. But as you keep on consuming more slices, your level of satisfaction will diminish. So when the quantity goes up, we believe that the extra utility that we get from any good, which we called the marginal utility, marginal means extra, so the marginal utility or satisfaction that we get from each subsequent unit will go down. So the marginal utility falls, and because of this fall of marginal utility, our willingness to pay our willingness to pay for that good will go down, because the first slice of pizza is not equal to the second slice of pizza for you, because you're not that hungry anymore. And that may explain why when the quantity go up, your price will go down, because you will not be valuing each additional unit the same, and your willingness to pay goes down. So these are the three reasons why our demand curve is downward sloping.